thought maybe since you can't really record a voice on Twitter, the next best option is to go ahead and just record it on a space, and it saves it still. So that's what. Yeah, sorry about that. I kind of forgot I had started a space for a second there. So many are under the spell that things are gonna go back to normal, or even caught in the subdued assumption that normal is somehow good. Political theatrics are aiming to accomplish states of consciousness, and more people than would expect are falling for the bait. Many who awakened to the inaccuracies of mainstream media a couple years ago seem to have been pacified back to sleep as new divisive issues emerge and false virtuosity takes hold of the individual's capacity to think.
Hey, Logan, how's it going?
Hey, good man. I was just chilling at home. I was just thinking about starting up space just because people usually end up wandering in because people like it. So yeah,
Yeah,
if you like build it, they will come.
yeah, the Invisible Night School ended about half an hour ago. I was actually kind of surprised that another room hadn't popped up. So,
Oh yeah, you know what? I caught like the last 10 minutes of that. Were you the one that said that you wished it went on for like another 2 hours?
yeah, another half hour because they're only doing a 90-minute thing, and it just feels like it could easily do with another half hour. So, yeah.
Yeah, I only caught like I said, like the last 10 minutes, so I heard that part.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
I was away from my phone because I had a headset on. Did you happen to see who was saying that there was no data for the phenomenon? It would have been Nick Campbell or I'm just trying to
It
think.
was Steve Long.
What's that?
Steve Long.
It was Steve. Okay, all right. So he must be a skeptor slash debunker then, because that's a very interesting position to take.
Oh
Also,
yeah, he's hardcore.
okay, so he's a hardcore debunker then, like
Yeah, yeah.
skeptic. Okay, interesting. Hmm.
He's probably the most. I can't think of a harder one than him in the whole field.
Hmm. And what's his typical thing about stuff? Like he just argues there's absolutely nothing. Like he just takes a fundamentalist opinion on this and won't recognize that there's any data at all, or what?
Yep. Well, he has a very like strict scientific standard,
Hmm.
for evidence that he'll accept as acceptable data. I guess.
Right. Yeah. That's a tactic that skeptics and debunkers often use, but the problem is it's only data that is of interest to them or not of interest to them. So if it's anything that um, disconfirms their bias, then they will ignore it. I've seen this a million times. They're basically a waste of time to talk to, because it doesn't matter what you do. I mean, a fucking flying saucer could land on their head and it wouldn't matter. They'll just say, "Sorry, no, it's not real." To me, they remind me of COVID deniers that, the ones that got into the hospital and they're dying and they're on ventilators just before they're getting the ventilators put in, and they're like, "This isn't real. This isn't real. It's all a hoax." And it's just like, okay, all right, do whatever you want. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. With him in particular, I first met him over the internet, like just like in the chat rooms on like YouTube videos,
Mm-hmm.
watching the various podcasters, and
Mm-hmm.
he just came across as like a huge asshole. But
Yeah.
uh,
Most of the
but
time, these people are. I've encountered these before, so I know the type. It's just like they're basically a waste of air.
I was gonna say he reminds me like when you talk to him in person. When I saw him for the first time, like a few weeks ago, he was being interviewed by Steve Cambion,
Mm,
and I was like, this guy's actually he seems a lot more nicer than I thought he was.
mm, interesting.
But maybe he was just being nice for the interview. I don't know. But
Mm,
I told him that, so he
mhm,
knows. But
right.
yeah. But like as you can see tonight, yeah, he's just a dick.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I just sort of heard an after comment, and then I didn't really, because I was not near the phone, so I didn't really see who sort of made the thing. But he seemed to be sort of scoffing at what I said. It's just like, dude, like if you've come from anything having to do with academia, you would know that academia is full of fraud. And um, basically, I don't know if you heard what Leah said, which is the fundamental issue, which I would have gone into in more detail, is
Crisis
that
with
there is
reproducibility.
what's that?
Yeah, the crisis with reproducibility.
Yeah, yeah, and there is, and there's a good reason for that because
I know about it. Yep.
yeah, there's a tremendous amount of fraud going on in academia, and a lot of people are going for research grants. They're fudging data. They're fudging research. They won't release their data and research. I mean, if the field of science is as pure as the driven snow, then there would be no problem with these scientists releasing their data and their information. But they won't even do it in their own so-called well-established fields. So anybody claiming um, and trying to apply similar type things to this field preemptively as a way of shutting it down needs to take a hard look in the mirror first.
a lot of people that they're asking to go back and look over their work to reproduce this stuff and whatnot. A lot of them are like, yeah, right, and they're super offended, which I get, like my work's impeccable. How dare you question it or whatever. But I wonder if some of those aren't just like they know it's bogus, so they don't want them to like check it out.
Yeah, no, there is. I mean, there is fraud. I mean, there's been all kinds of cases where people have been caught. Um,
Like what?
and oh, just the literature's full of cases. Even in peer-reviewed journals, peer review is, I mean, people are talking about it tonight in the group like it's some kind of magical process that guarantees that whatever's being published is accurate, and it's not. It's about as far from the truth as can be. There have been all kinds of hoaxes in the field of science. One I'll just, off the top of my head, I'll just talk about is something called the Sokal Affair. And it was like a postmodern cultural studies journal. Had a submission from somebody that was a physicist that wanted to talk about they had some fancy title about quantum something something, and but it was something after. Anyways, I can't remember the title right now, but they basically got completely hosed on it. All they did was pepper the whole paper with a bunch of confirmation bias wording that would appeal to the people that were engaged in the peer review process. They printed this like it was some wonderful, amazing piece of work that was being done by someone in an adjacent field, but unrelated. And then it came out a few months later that it was a hoax. And then they actually did the same thing I think about 10 or 12 years later, they did the same thing again, got them again. But there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, hoaxes in academia and science have been, um, there's a whole history of that. To me, that's more interesting than even the UFO phenomenon in some ways, because it points out. I mean, science as a concept, absolutely, the idea, the principles of it, fine. But pretending that it's a pure science, I mean, somebody would have to be incredibly naive to pretend that that's the case. So, yeah,
The problem with all of these different things, even as it pertains to government and the law, is there's a fatal flaw in the chain, which is us. And,
yeah,
you know, our humanness, our flaws.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I mean, in the room tonight earlier on, I guess you wouldn't have heard this part, but I think it was Nick and Campbell. They basically were saying, and part of the problem I have with the room, that room, is that they've taken a really kind of fundamentalist approach to the topic, and it's a very fundamentalist, rationalist approach to the topic. And they were basically saying that anything that's involved in this field, unless it goes through peer review, it's worthless. And it's just like, well, that's pretty much garbage. And one of the people, I can't remember which one, admitted that they'd only started looking at this topic like 3 months ago. It's like, you're way too early into trying to get a handle on this to even say something like this. This is one of the most evasive phenomenon you could ever hope to study. And the whole idea of phenomenology is to approach this from the meta perspective. And anybody that wants to try and study this under a microscope, like, get
Oh,
a
yeah.
finger of an alien, well, guess what? Ain't going to happen. The sciences are full of theoretical propositions that people make, and it takes years and decades sometimes to prove those. This
String
this
theory,
whole
bro.
thing is, and this is no different. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, people are readily accept string theory. It's just a theory, though, and the
yeah.
Big Bang
Well,
theory.
and it was a hot theory. I mean, it was a hot theory about 15 to 20 years ago. Everybody was piling into string theory, and guess what? It's a big zero. There's nothing there so far. Not saying there couldn't be in the future, but it turned out to be a big bust.
I
So
think someone proposed that it might have been just a huge psyop to distract from some of the other work that was being done in more classified settings. I think it was Weinstein who said that. I was like, wow, that's something crazy for him to say.
yeah, he made that kind of suggestion. That's pretty out there, but yeah, I mean, it's good actually Leah's here, because I was just talking Leah about maybe some of the flavor in the room with the idea that peer review is a pure process in science and so on and so forth. And my comment back is just, and this is not to you since you noted the reproducibility thing, which is I would have gone into in more detail, But the sciences have this. This is a fundamental issue in the sciences. It's a reproducibility crisis. And a lot of it has to do with faculty and researchers not researching their data. And to be quite honest, in the time I spent in academia, there's a lot of fraud. There's a lot of fraud in academia when people are, there's that kind of triad approach to promotions and getting salary, um, bonuses and moving up the chain and stuff like that. And it's, basically what can you secure in research grants? That's one of the axes. It's, what kind of teaching are you doing is another one of the axes. And then what kind of research are you doing is another one, publications and stuff like that. And if you don't have that triad, you typically don't move up. So there's a real tendency for fraud in academia. And it's not, I'm not talking it's everywhere and everything, but it happens quite a bit. And it's one of the unaddressed issues. And so anytime people say, well, if it's not peer reviewed, that's the end of it. That's I have a bit of an issue. So yeah.
Yeah. First of all, Logan, thanks so much for passing me the mic. Yeah, the reproducibility crisis is. I mean, I've really been exploring it through the lens of like mental health and sort of the, I would say, the epistemological crisis associated with psychopharmacology. And the reproducibility crisis, right? That you can't redo or duplicate a lot of these efforts. And this is an issue that's pretty well understood and acknowledged to exist across a number of academic disciplines. And John, like, I'm totally with you. So I did my undergraduate work at a very well-known engineering school. And I was also in ROTC at the time. And I bring this up because there was always a sort of peripheral discussion about what they call the triple helix, right? Academia, the military industrial complex, and then private industry. And these three forces, particularly in the hard sciences, quote unquote, in the engineering disciplines, this is where grant money comes from, and this is where research funding comes from. And of course, there are going to be competing interests. And I think that and I say this as someone with a very robust analytical, scientific, and mathematics background. Informatics and computing was the nature of my graduate studies. But I think that there's almost a myopic arrogance present in a lot of the hard sciences about them being sort of the final arbiters of reality and experience and knowledge. But as I've proceeded in my education, both formally and informally, it's very, very clear to me that our conceptions and understanding of the scientific method are very limited and only serve a very small fraction of our understanding of both the phenomenological and metaphysical world, and the interplay between the two. And I think, like, that's why I pulled that quote from Fraser into the spaces previously, because the Golden Bough is like really like a seminal work, right, on like mysticism and religious practice. And to see and understand the scientific method as being the end all be all arbiter of our understanding and interpretation of things is completely counter to everything we know about the progression of human knowledge and experience through history. The same way that we had alchemy and magic, like, we now have the scientific method, but it's still very limited, and eventually it will be superseded with something that's much, much more appropriate or sophisticated or nuanced. Um, and by the way, I fucking love like the conspiracy that string theory is an op, because I was just going to college when string theory was becoming a really big thing, and I was sitting in like nuclear engineering, engineering physics. And there were so many like engineering neckbeard fanboys of string theory when I was in engineering school who just could not get enough of Brian Greene, and seeing it just spin its wheels and spin out and continue to just basically be a philosophical thought experiment. Um, is weirdly gratifying and really, really interesting, because it speaks again to really how limited our knowledge and understanding of the world really is.
It's funny you mentioned Brian Greene because a journalist friend, this is back when I lived in Vancouver, um, we met him one day for an interview. And so, of course, he's all big on the topic and stuff like that because he had the 1 or 2 hour special at the time on TV back in the day. And anyways, I ended up describing to him an out of body experience. Ironically, he was fascinated by it. So, um, yeah, because it was that particular experience was induced through a psychoactive compound, and he was like, "Where do I get this? I want to try this," and so on and so forth. So yeah, so there is maybe a little bit of openness with some of these guys, but yes, string theory was pretty hot for a while, and it just hasn't, it hasn't gone anywhere.
Hey, so Chupacabra is gonna start a room like like right now. He's in here right now if he wants to say something. But yeah, I hit him up to see if just to open the space, just to kind of, you know, if I open a space, people will just come just because they want a place to just to talk about shit, So if one's not open, then I like to hear people talk about stuff. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm
I'll
down
jump
to.
into Tupa's space if he's gonna kick one off.
Yeah, same.
yeah, he says 8:30.
Yeah, just quickly before we go, and that's good for me too. I would probably just hit the audience late as usual. One of the things I have found over time with the phenomenon is there is an invitation at times, if you engage the phenomenon, to question these categories and experiences. I found that most of my experiences have been very tutelary in nature and lead me to question certain components of reality and are driving towards a bit of a meta proposition about how reality actually works. So, and it'd be one thing if some of these experiences were on my own, but I have shared these experiences with other people as well, where we've had a full-on change of reality around us that was absolutely unequivocal. And yeah.
Oh yeah, he was on his desktop, so he couldn't say anything. Yeah, you can only you can only talk if you're on the phone. Although I
Which
think
is, dude, such a shortcoming of the platform because everyone sounds like shit on their phone mics, and I would kill to be using my desktop mic and setup for this stuff.
they gotta get that fixed. But you know what? I think there might be a workaround because Windows has now you can install Android apps on it now. So I think maybe we can port the Twitter app onto it like via the Android app, and maybe it'll think it's the phone.
I'm way too much of a normie, man. I use an iPhone.
Oh right, I don't think Mac does that yet. I don't know.
No, it probably doesn't. I don't know, man.
Oh, schedule. You can go ahead and talk. The space is about to close.
And
Feel
hey, just so I know, because we're going to go to Chupacabra's spot. Just wanted to say, in reference to the string theory, there's a guy by the name of Sylvester. What's his name again? Sylvester Gates, and he's a African American theoretical physicist, and he was talking big time about string theory at one time, and he was mentioning how he's realizing that the fabric of string theory is equivalent to computer code. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So he was like saying it wasn't
Oh
only
yeah.
just not only just computer code, but a specific type of computer code that is used to actually, that we know of right now that was invented by an individual. I don't know the guy's name, so don't quote me on that. So, that was an eye-opening discovery for me because that just led me to believe that indeed we probably are living in either a simulation or in a program in which we can control and manipulate by programming,
Yes.
So it's interesting, very
Yeah.
interesting.
Check out Donald Hoffman, The Case Against Reality, for some thoughts on
Mm-hmm.
this, and then like any kind of information theory or like the theory of the computational universe is exactly what you're talking about. Like basically this idea that time and everything else can be broken down into like quantized particles or discrete particles that refresh simultaneously, similar to how computer code refreshes. And that information is basically like based on like quantum positioning at the root. The final sort of substrate of the universe is information. It's zeros and ones.
Right.
So yeah, really good shit. Check out the book Alien Information Theory by Andrew Gallimore. It's about DMT in the computational universe, but it's
Mm.
totally worth reading. He's super brilliant. He's like an MD, PhD in like neuroscience or neurochemistry. And even if you just read the first 20 pages of it, he goes through this at a pretty accessible level. So highly, highly recommended.
There was a guy on
Absolutely.
Rogan just now talking about DMT. If you want to check that out too.
DMT is amazing. I've actually tried it, to be honest with you. It is amazing. It really,
It's more
anytime
real
you have
than
a
real.
oh yeah, for sure. anytime you have an issue, and I'm working on a major project right now, and anytime I had a problem that I couldn't figure out, I would take DMT and just like sleep it over. And next day, I mean, something that I thought was super difficult that I couldn't figure out how I was going to deal with this problem, boom, it just miraculously came to be, and the answers was right there, and it was so apparent, and it's just amazing. I mean, it just really truly opens up your mind. It gives you a bunch of ideas. Highly recommend it.
Yeah, they say like information is probably like another dimension of the universe. So like maybe we can just like, if we're thinking about it the right way, we can just pluck that information out of the air, you know?
Exactly. We just got to learn how to tap into it and use these spaces to share information, no pun intended, but to share information on how to better train ourselves to tap into that information. Because a lot of times we usually get this information like a piece of coal, and it has to be refined, in order to figure out exactly the true definition of what was downloaded to us, you know. So yeah, I think, but I think there's going to be a possibility in the future that we're going to be able to get these downloads in a more refined manner, as opposed to just having it as a piece of coal that has to be refined, if we know how to tap into it in a better and more efficient way.
What if aliens know how to do that? What if they know how to pull it out of the air like in an advanced way, and like that's how they advance so quick?
And I think that's what we're looking at. We're looking at uh extraterrestrials having a higher level of not only technology, but a higher level of tapping in to that infinite information,
Yep.
that universal information. And that's what we could learn from them.
Yeah, that's, I think I mean, this is exactly my, where I've arrived at with my stuff, and some of the experiences that I've had is that there's a programmable aspect of this, and whatever the phenomenon is exactly, it represents sort of this meta energetic informational level, and it can be programmed. We can interact with it in parts and degrees at an almost programmable level through extraordinarily focused states of consciousness, things like chaos magic, meditation, prayer, and so on and so forth. And that allows us to cross the veil and engage in an interactive process with it. So, so the informational theory about this that you're talking about, with I know the physicist you're talking about. I can't think of his name right now, but yeah, I'm totally down with that. It makes sense.
Is that who it was? Sebastian something?
Sylvester Gates is his name.
That's right. Yeah, Gates. Yeah,
Sylvester Gates.
Yeah, yeah, he's a cool
Brilliant
cat.
guy.
Is everyone cool? I was going to go ahead and just move on over to Chupacabras now, if everyone's good with that.
Yep, sounds good to me.
Alrighty. All right, I'll see you guys over there. He's live now, so.